having gone the route of civil engineering and with a bachelor's and then master's in architectural engineering, you would think that I should be satisfied at that point. But I couldn't be satisfied because the fire had burnt. You see, I was the admirer of two particular people at that time. One called Booker T. Washington and one called Marcus Garvey. In the reverse, Garvey first and then Washington. Garvey because in my household, Garvey was the word next to the deity. And the relationship between Garvey and Booker T had become so close that I too followed the teachings and philosophical concept of the late Honorable Booker T. Washington. But within that philosophy was something else both men always taught: the integrity of the individual. And the integrity of the individual refused, in my case, to accept lies, such as Benny Goodman is the king of swing, and Duke Ellington must have been the emperor of swing. Chick Webb, having taught Gene Krupa, I was told that Gene Krupa is the best on the drum, but he went to Chick Webb to get to be the best on the drum. I don't know if you know Chick Webb, you know Ella Fitzgerald. Chick taught her. I just throw that in to show you that the lie doesn't stop in ancient time. It continues up to today.
In Dr. Yosef Ben-Jochannan's speech, Black Man Wake Up, he explores the historical relationship between Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington, two influential figures in Black empowerment. Dr. Ben-Jochannan explains that both men significantly shaped his thinking, particularly the emphasis on self-reliance, education, and African pride. Garvey, with his vision of Pan-Africanism, and Washington, with his focus on industrial education, encouraged Black people to reject the colonial mentality and pursue autonomy and dignity.
And so in my further examination, I was dealing with 3.14. All of you here in engineering knows what it's supposed to symbolize. They say it's pi. And I was taught that it came from the Greeks. And you know, I believed it. What else could I do? The teacher told me. And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pi being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized have to do with the time when you start writing history. They call it prehistoric and historic. And Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God, Zeus and Apollo, came from Ethiopia. So when you get in the Greek fraternities and sororities, just remember what Homer said. You must have dealt with the Iliad and the Odyssey by now. But again, I understand. You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you for enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you out. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V. and Reverend Bartolomé de las Casas on the island of Hispaniola, now called Haiti and Santo Domingo. You see, nobody told you it's time to get sorry, to feel bad when some Haitians were being slaughtered on the coast of Florida. That's what it is. If you send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506, under the aegis of the Pope of the Roman Church and Bartolomé de las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, as conquerors yourself in 711, under the leadership of Tariq, for whom the Rock of Gibraltar is now named Gibraltariq. Nothing in your education, because there's nothing in your textbooks about any of this. So you'll have to go to Spain. Luckily, at the University of Barcelona, where I attended for 2 years, there are these documents, and I had never known anything about them. I hadn't known that the Africans called Moors had ruled Spain from 711 until 1485. The last of them losing power at a place called Granada. I was always wondering, why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman? So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? It is when I went there I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. She's still raising hell in Montgomery, Alabama, and in Tuskegee, Alabama, and in Tuskegee Institute. I could look around and see her. Of course, the first one of you threw a good baseball and a good basketball, forget that she could raise hell. You don't want her for a wife anymore. You hit the numbers, you don't want her for a wife. Some of you forget you look like your mama. Sorry, fellows. Try one, it may be good for your health. But we must go back and ask ourselves, why is this so? And I said to the students today at the high school, even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan that the first papyrus paper was created, not rice paper in China. Just as it was in Egypt that engineering, Sesostris II, you are engineers, many of you, Sesostris II changed the flow of the Nile. That S-turn you see there was placed there by African engineers in 2250 BC. There was no Jesus yet, no Adam and Eve story yet, because that came out of the Sanhedrin in 700 BC, just yesterday, when the African engineers was changing the flow of the Nile. Hydrographic engineering, there was no Adam, no Eve yet. No Jehovah, because Abraham, the first Jew that brought out the concept of a Jehovah, wasn't even born. The Africans had already worshipped Ptah, P-T-A-H. Amen-Ra. You still say Amen at the end of each prayer, and they told you it means so be it. That's a lie. Amen was the god of the north. When Scorpio, the Pharaoh, headed the north and Egypt was divided into two groups, it had gone into a civil war. And Mena, or Nama, was the king of the south, and his god was Ra. The conquest of Mena over Scorpion allowed Mena to join God Amen with God Ra and call Amen Ra, thousands of years before there was a Jehovah Jesus, O Allah.